Have you ever considered how a society can systematically enforce inequality, even in the most ordinary places people gather every day? Public facility segregation under Jim Crow was a pervasive system of laws and customs that mandated the separation of races in nearly all public spaces throughout the American, South and parts of other states. This forced separation primarily targeted African Americans and was explicitly designed to assert white supremacy and deny black citizens equal access and status in society. The legal foundation for this widespread segregation was the United States Supreme Court's 1896 decision in Plessy v. Ferguson. This ruling famously established the doctrine of separate but equal, which declared that racial segregation was constitutional as long as the separate facilities provided for each race were theoretically equal in quality. In practice, however, the facilities designated for Black Americans were almost always inferior, underfunded, and neglected compared to those reserved for white citizens. This legal framework allowed states to create a rigid racial caste system, using law to enforce deeply ingrained social prejudices and economic control. The goal was never true equality, but rather the maintenance of a subordinate status for African Americans following the end of slavery and Reconstruction. This system manifested in daily life through countless explicit signs and policies. Black individuals were often relegated to separate waiting rooms in bus and train stations, given different entrances to theaters and restaurants, and forced to use segregated restrooms and water fountains. Public schools were entirely separate, as were hospitals, cemeteries, and even sections of public beaches. These rules ensured that interactions between races were minimized and strictly controlled, reinforcing the notion of Black inferiority in every public interaction. One of the particularly insidious aspects was the concept of race-specific facilities. Beyond just separate facilities, some places simply excluded Black people altogether, or provided no equivalent at all, clearly demonstrating the falsehood of the equal part of separate but equal. This created a dual society where access to quality public services was severely restricted for millions of citizens. Ultimately, public facility segregation under Jim Crow was for more than mere separation. It was a legally sanctioned structure of oppression that deeply impacted the lives of African Americans, limiting their opportunities, undermining their dignity, and perpetuating a deeply unjust social order for generations until the civil rights movement successfully challenged and dismantled these laws.